Well, hello, everybody. Good evening and happy Veterans Day. Welcome to another session of Story Time with me, your loving narrator, Tim Maloney, Sir Arminius, whatever you want to call me. I am okay with all of it. We are going to be jumping into more Gyfted tonight. The story continues to get deeper and deeper. It is a grimdark fantasy. Cal, Shay, Ovette. We've got Jord. We have Artie. That's his name. Artie. In our last session, we found that Cal, who had been asked for to go and meet with somebody who was going to gift some things to the resistance, well, he went and met with the guy. Sorry, out of breath a little bit. He went and met with the guy and come to find out that they wanted him to go and basically blackmail a city leader who was a good dude and had turned down the smuggler dude. I'm forgetting names at the moment. If you want to know them, go watch the recordings. So had turned down the smuggler dude. So Cal went and did some work, found that he could get a key that I don't know that we ever actually saw the key get used. So I'm not sure what he needed the key for. But got a key from an old acquaintance who had grown up in his orphanage with him, Prissa. She had been visibly scarred by flame, but she was now running an orphanage of her own and very, very kind. In fact, when she discovered that somebody had broken into her office, she left coins on her desk and basically said, "Hey, you don't need to steal from me. I will give you what I can give you." And so, very, very good person. Um, and so Cal felt bad about that, ended up giving coin to her instead, coin that he had kept in the pouch from Ovette. But he still stole the key. They went into the person's house, they broke in, they planted the false documents, and then managed to escape the house. The prefects came and arrested the official. When Cal and company went back to tell what they had done, the guy claimed that he had already sent some of the weapons onto the resistance. But how did he know where the resistance headquarters was? On the way out, Cal and company got attacked by inquisitors. Inquisitors, it turns out, aren't living beings, which we probably could have guessed from earlier when we found out that the High Inquisitor, or whatever his name is, his son, the man in the black armor, was no longer alive. Neither, it seems, are the other inquisitors. They fought them off. got past them and find that the resistance headquarters has been attacked in a most unruly way. So they get there and they find that, again, that the headquarters had been attacked and that most of the resistance has been killed. Um, Callaghan fights with the man in black armor, but this time he sort of loses himself. But it comes to find out that he fought off the man in black armor, but not before Shay's father, the head of this resistance cell, was killed. And so now the resistance, who they see as essentially terrorists, Cal decides, if you're going to think we're terrorists, maybe it's time that we act like terrorists. And so he decides that he is going to go and kill the matriarch. The matriarch, I believe, is essentially the head uh Eudos person in um Undis. Undis, that's the name. So he has decided that they are going to kill the matriarch. And that's where we will pick up our tale this evening. So sit back, everybody, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into another evening of indie author goodness with Gyfted by D.W. Lewis. Read for you by me, your humble narrator, Tim Maloney. I hope you all enjoy. Remember, all of these are recorded, and after the stream, I put them up on youtube.com/@SirArminius. I also am streaming right now to X, YouTube, Kick, Twitch. Watch it on the platform of your choice. If you have questions, comments, concerns, I'll be happy to chat in between chapters. Here we go, diving in with 19. Year 3, Sanctum Spire. Ovette stared at herself in the mirror. Her golden mask glinted in the midday light, its sharp contours nothing like her own. She pulled it off and stared into the mirror, her white hair trussed into a tight bun that pulled at her scalp whenever she turned. Something the matter, miss? Clara sat behind Ovette, hands folded in her lap, waiting for instructions. It pained Ovette that even now, when they were alone, Clara clung to formality, as if being the Gyfted demanded distance. Ovette sighed, setting the mask aside before unfurling her hair, relief cresting through her scalp. No, Clara, nothing's the matter. She crossed her room and let herself fall onto her bed. I just don't like it. Clara stood and drifted to Ovette's side with practiced elegance, never too far away not to pick something up, to fetch, to obey. Her hands were clasped together, and she offered the faintest smile. I understand, miss, but the Lord Inquisitor is quite insistent. But I'm already the Gyfted. Why do I need to be something else? Clara sat beside her, gaze fixed ahead rather than meeting Ovette's. We can't always be who we want to be, miss. Sometimes we must be what others need us to be, even when we don't like it. Ovette rested herself on her elbows, studying Clara with newfound curiosity. She'd been her personal handmaiden ever since Ovette had arrived in Sanctum Spire. Early on in their relationship, she'd tried to learn more about Clara's past, her family, her home, but Clara had said such things didn't matter to her anymore. She owed her life to the Lord Inquisitor, and she would do all she could to serve him well. Over time, Ovette had stopped asking. She appreciated everything that Clara did for her. The handmaiden, ever present, ever ready to serve, but forever distant. The only time Clara didn't hover was during Ovette's studies, lessons spent mastering her gift, what it meant to be gifted, how she could work with the Lord Inquisitor to help people. He even insisted on teaching her how to defend herself with a sword. You may be the gifted, but drawing in and releasing gift takes time, the Lord Inquisitor had often said. Time your enemies can use against you. A truth she'd come to realize after a series of grueling sparring lessons, trials that had left her bruised more often than not. Is that what you wanted to be, Clara? A handmaiden? Clara's cheeks flushed, her usually steady hands twitching before she pressed them tighter together. Serving the Lord Inquisitor and the Gifted is more than someone like me could ever ask for. Yes, but this may not be what I dreamed of as a little girl, Clara interrupted, rising to fetch the golden mask. But it is who I needed to be. Who I needed to be? Ovette took the mask from Clara's outstretched hand, tracing unfamiliar ridges and contours. She didn't like the way the mask made her look like someone else. If she wore it, if she allowed herself to become the matriarch, what would happen to who she really was? What would happen to just Ovette? Come, Clara said with a softness that belied her years. The Lord Inquisitor is waiting for you. Year 5. Yundis. Ovette took off her mask and placed it in her lap. She jostled from side to side as her personal airship dipped through the cloud layer. Outside, the wind whooshed past, billowing the early morning air around them. Clara sat rigid, her eyes squeezed shut, fists clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. Every jolt of the airship made her flinch. Ovette placed a hand on her knee and gave it a soft squeeze. She smiled as a red-faced Clara blinked back. Nothing to be afraid of, Ovette said, her tone soft and calm. Sorry, Clara stammered. Ovette chuckled, widening her smile as she took Clara's hand in her own. And there's certainly nothing to be sorry about. The airship steadied, the sound of the rushing wind fading into the steady hum of the airship's gift engine. Ovette kept hold of Clara's hand until the tension eased from her handmaiden's fingers. Beyond the viewport, the ringed city of Yundis sat atop an ocean of beautiful, endless blue. At its heart raged a maelstrom, violent, yet its swirling depths held an eerie calm. A gigantic chain, adorned with pulsing glyphs, speared through the storm. White buildings clustered in the shadow of Yundis's chain, some gleaming in the light reflected off the water's surface. Between them, colorful market banners flapped in the breeze. Ovette closed her eyes and imagined the hustle and bustle below, the merchants and patrons haggling over prices, the chatter and pleasant chaos of the streets. It had been too long since she'd walked the streets. Too long since she'd engaged directly with the people of Eudos and truly listened to them. A beaming smile spread across her face. The people will be pleased to hear of your arrival, matriarch, Clara said. Ovette turned to her handmaiden. I've waited a long time for this. The chance to be among the people again, to join with Yundis's chain and serve them. Clara leaned over to peer out of the viewport. Her face scrunched as the airship flew over a less affluent district, where the gleaming white towers gave way to buildings stained green and brown by seawater and neglect. Here's hoping you'll be kept safe from harm this time, Clara muttered. Rumors around about rebels within the city's walls. I am perfectly capable of looking after myself, Ovette replied, though her gaze drifted to the figure seated across from her. A man, at least she thought him a man, clad in obsidian black armor, a golden spire embossed on his chest. Plus, I still have the hand here with me. She regarded the hand with warmth as she spoke. Clara shifted as her gaze flicked to Ovette's silent protector. He unnerves me, she admitted. Ovette smiled in reply, passing her warmth to Clara. The terror she'd felt upon first meeting the hand seemed a lifetime ago, as if it had belonged to another person. Other than Clara, he had been one of the few constants she'd had in her life since Igni. His presence comforted her. There was something familiar about him, something she had never been able to put her finger on. Year 8. Yundis Citadel. Thank you all for attending. The Lord Inquisitor addressed the crowd with open arms, his voice booming through the grand hall. It fills my heart to see so many of Yundis's finest joining together to celebrate our blessed matriarch. May she guide us all. May she guide us all. The crowd's echo tightened Ovette's throat. Years of study had never prepared her for public speaking. The social elite had filled the grand hall of Yundis's citadel, their embroidered ball gowns and embellished raiments shimmering among the sculptured marble. The powdered faces of each attendee stared up at her, each of them waiting to hear her wisdom. She brushed a hand over her simpler attire, a small rebellion that the Lord Inquisitor had allowed her, much to Clara's dismay. Yet even in plain fabric, she felt like a fraud. Her golden mask helped. It hid her wincing, her self-doubt. It kept her both faceless and nameless. To her people, she wasn't Ovette, just the matriarch, a moniker devised by the Lord Inquisitor to shield her from the rebels, from the past. She'd resisted at first, but she'd grown to understand the need for such secrecy. The Gyfted was a threat to the rebellion's vaunted ideals of freedom through violence. Yet, for all their barbarism, the heart of their cause was at least just, a better life for Udens. It seemed even a gang of thugs and murderers could hold noble intentions. Perhaps one day, a path to true unification would be possible. Matriarch. Clara's elbow nudged her ribs. Ovette blinked. The Lord Inquisitor had turned, his hand outstretched. The crowd behind him waited, silent, all eyes on her, on their matriarch. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, a reflexive smile tugging under her mask, unseen but steadying. She scanned the crowd, locking eyes with a merchant's wife, a councilman's son. She passed her gaze between as many as possible, recalling names when she could, connecting with them. My friends, she began, thank you for coming. Her stomach fluttered, but her voice remained strong. It warms my heart dearly to see so many come together for the good of all. Faces plastered with practiced smiles stared back. The elite of Yundis cared little for those beneath them, most choosing to ignore the outer districts. These people wouldn't lift a finger for anyone but themselves, not unless it lined their pockets. But Ovette kept her voice light. It is our duty to protect those less fortunate than us. As a child, I believed our Daven neighbors to be nothing more than oppressors, monsters who wished to steal us away. But I was wrong. She gestured to the Lord Inquisitor, who extended a deep bow in response. This man showed me the error of my ways, showed me that Udens and Davens were more alike than different. To him I owe my path, my very life. A prefect in parade-polished armor pushed through the balcony crowd and whispered something to the Lord Inquisitor. Ovette's skin prickled as her mentor's expression darkened. She turned back to the crowd. And to you, I give thanks for believing in me, for listening when it would have been easier to turn away. Your generosity gives me the strength I need to continue my work, for Udens and Davins alike. Her dress's hitchings pinched her ribs as she bowed, shallow but earnest nonetheless. Few here deserved gratitude, save for perhaps Lord Udican. He was the only attendee that she looked forward to speaking with. She finished her bow and scanned the crowd again, his apparent absence causing the flutter in her stomach to tremble. A couple weaving through the crowd caught her eye. The woman glided, parting nobles with a gentle hand and practiced grace. But the man, Ovette's breath caught. He was familiar, yet she couldn't put a finger on why. Perhaps it was the way he held himself, the slope of his shoulders, or the tension in his hand as he pushed people aside. Even in a tailored doublet, he looked like a wolf stalking its prey. Ovette chuckled to herself at the thought of another soul wishing they could be anywhere else but here. Her attention drew back into the room as a hand grasped her elbow and guided her away from the podium. The Lord Inquisitor stepped forward, staring directly at the same couple Ovette had been watching. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We have a very special guest with us tonight. The man and his date froze in place. It is my deepest honor to formally introduce you all, a man of renowned tenacity. The man in question reached behind his back. I'm to escort you to the chain room, miss, Clara said, her fingers clasped tight over Ovette's wrist. What's going on? Ovette asked. She didn't hear Clara's reply. Her faithful handmaid's lips moved, but she heard only the words of the Lord Inquisitor and the name he'd just spoken aloud. Welcome, Chainbreaker. Dun, dun, dun. Clearly, the Lord Inquisitor recognizes Cal, even if Ovette herself does not. No, poor Ovette. Whatever shall she do? Who ever knows? It is a thing, is it not? Yes, Ovette will be okay. She will survive without you. Oh no, not I. I will survive. As long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. But I've got all my life to live, and I've got all my love to give. I will survive. I will survive. Hey, hey. Do 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 do. Ah, yes. So, the Lord Chainbreaker has arrived. The Lord Inquisitor knows who the Lord Chainbreaker is. And next, we will see what happens as we dive into our next chapter. Are you all ready? Let's start. 20. Cal stared at the tram as Eunice's finest ambled forward. Being among the city's wealthiest was one thing. Being crammed into a metal box that dangled hundreds of feet over a maelstrom was another. He tugged at his doublet's collar, swallowing hard. Jord had allowed Cal to borrow one of his fancier garments, and had even made arrangements for it to be adjusted. Yet, even after the adjustments, the belted leather constricted Cal's chest. The dark blue fabric embroidered with traditional Yundis waves felt too soft, too foreign against his chest. Every breath threatened to burst the seams. He'd argued that fabric tucks didn't matter, and caring about whether an outfit accentuated or not was a waste of time, to which Jord had replied with a series of eye rolls and posture lessons. Shay looped her arm through his and guided him forward, flashing her pretty lashes at a passing attendee. "Who's that?" Cal muttered. "No idea," Shay said through her teeth, grin intact. "Then what are you doing? You're drawing attention to us." "We're not skulking through some gang's hideout, Cal. Here, the way to move unseen is to be seen." "That doesn't make any sense." "Just wave, Cal." He obeyed, lifting a hand to a cluster of older women. They turned away to whisper behind gloved hands, derisive glances thrown back at him. "What are you doing?" Shay elbowed him. "You look like you want to kill those women." "I hate this," Cal seethed. Infiltration wasn't new to either of them. He played the part of a servant or personal guard with ease, but posing as a member of the social elite made his skin crawl. "Invitations, please." A pair of prefects, the two-tone hues of their armor polished to a mesmerizing shimmer, barred their path. Beyond them, the tram, with a similarly nautical design running up and down its sides, hung suspended from a track bridging the inner ring to the citadel. Cal spotted two other tracks in the distance, one connecting to the wharf district, near Jord's now ruined warehouse, and another to the Bay district. Though some unknown piece of technology dampened the maelstrom's roar, its ferocity vibrated through Cal's boots. The prefect cleared his throat and thrust his hand closer. "Sir?" Shay nudged Cal, then slid her hand inside his doublet. Cal's skin tingled as her fingers brushed his chest. He told himself it was just her brand activating, just the gift being pulled in, nothing more. The thought did little to stop the heat creeping up his neck. "Here you go," Shay said, offering the invitations. "Sorry about him. One too many blows to the head." The prefect eyed Cal, then scrutinized the gift-altered papers. Shay clung to Cal's arm, hiding her pulsing brand. "Lord and Lady Ovorn, welcome to the—" The prefect trailed off, bringing the invitation closer to his face, his brow deepening as he studied it. "Problem?" Cal ignored the pinch of Shay's nails in his arm. "What is your patronage in the city, Lord Ovorn?" "Mercenary work." Cal's curt reply garnered whispers from the queue behind him. "We provide caravan guards," Shay chimed in, batting her lashes. "I don't think I've ever heard of the Ovorn family." "We're new to the city," Cal said. He glared at the prefect. He might not be able to charm his way in, but at least his impatience wasn't a ruse. "We're trying to make a name for ourselves, although I fear the competition might be a bit too fierce. Reginald here hasn't the temperament for failure. This gala might be our last chance to engage in a bit of meet and greet." Shay traced Cal's chest with her free hand, pouting. The prefect ran his gaze up and down Cal once more, glared at him for an uncomfortable few seconds, until the indignation of being forced to stand still for too long became too much for someone in the crowd. "What's the hold-up? Let them on the bloody tram! I swear these prefects—" The words dipped into a mumble. With a grunt, the prefect handed the invitations back to Cal. "Apologies, Lord Ovorn. Suspicious happenings within the city. Can't be too careful." "Oh, it's no bother at all. Right, darling?" Shay trilled. "Right," Cal said slowly. With Shay in tow, he stepped onto the tram, suppressing a shudder as the floor trembled, and found a seat as soon as possible. "Still scared of heights?" Shay teased. "Shut it." He glared out the window. He tensed as the tram lurched forward a few moments later, digging his fingers into the armrest of the plush seat. Around them, the elite had already forgotten the scene outside, though Cal doubted they'd stopped gossiping about it for weeks. Shay's stare pulled his attention. What? You know, you really do look handsome in that. You should ask Jord for a few more. Not happening. Cal shook his head. What was that back there? Not anything you haven't seen me do before. Bit of pouting, bit of flashing my ever so defenseless lashes. Works every time. I meant with the invitation. Why did he ask questions? He was pushing, he knew that. There was something Shay didn't want to discuss, but he needed to know if there was a problem. Her smile faltered. It's nothing. He held her gaze. Are you all right? She chuckled, turning to look out the window. Feels weird. You actually asking me. Actually caring. I always care, Cal said. I know you do. Just weird to see. Something wrong with your gift? He pushed again. I don't know. It feels different. Different how? I don't know how to explain it to you, Cal. It's just not the same? Tighter, maybe. It's hard to describe to someone who's... She stopped herself, looked at Cal. Hollowborn? Cal finished, his voice flat. You know I don't mean it like that. It's just difficult to put into words. He nodded. No point dwelling on the difference between them. Helping her with her gift would be impossible. He nodded. Should I worry about these? He asked, gesturing with his head back to his weapons. No, Shay forced a smile. I'm good. Just still a bit tired is all. But you might need to do the talking once we're inside. We're definitely dead. A smirk tugged his lips. Shay's laughter drew more glances, too loud for the hushed tram. For a moment, it felt good to make her laugh. Normal. Then he remembered why they were here. His jaw clenched. He'd put Shay through enough already. He shouldn't have asked her to come. She had enough blood on her hands. The gala was in full swing by the time Cal and Shay arrived. From the outside, Eunice's citadel bore many similarities to Igny's, but inside it could not have been more different. Statues of beautiful craftsmanship lined the walls of the entrance hall. Row upon row of paintings, each capturing the likeness of some pompous dignitary, hung between them, their frames inlaid with gold and silver. Streamers and floral arrangements placed throughout the grand hall served both as decoration and as a means to funnel the attendees. Dotted around the hall, prefects in shining armor stood motionless. Cal couldn't tell if they were on duty or meant to enhance the garish decorations. Probably both. He pushed through the throng of socialites feeding their own reputations by pretending to care about hemlines or tailored handkerchiefs. Shay tugged his arm, directing his attention to an empty, unguarded corridor. Relief washed over Cal at the thought of escaping the din of polite society. All around him, people fawned over one another, acting as though they cared about what the other was saying. How could George stand to be around these people? Cal hadn't spoken to a single guest yet, and already their voices were grating on him. Looping his arm through Shay's, he attempted to maneuver his way through the crowd again. An older couple blocked their path, the man standing firm despite his age. Cal debated shoving harder, but stopped himself. Too much attention. Plus, there was little need to injure a stubborn old man. Shay pulled Cal aside, flashing a smile at the couple as she scooped two wine flutes from a passing tray. She handed one to Cal and clinked her glass against his. He eyed the bubbles in the glass, scrunching his face at the suspected sweetness. Drink up, Shay said, sipping hers. He followed suit and sipped enough to make the act look real. The sweetness hit him first, the syrup-like texture coating his tongue. We can't just barge through, Shay murmured, tilting her head in faux politeness at strangers. We need to mingle, move naturally. Cal attempted to keep his expression neutral. Shay's cocked eyebrow told him that he'd failed. Shay didn't bother to hide her amusement at Cal's blatant discomfort. Just follow my lead. She threw back the remainder of her drink, and then plucked several small pieces of food from a tray, mimicking the reactions of the women around them. Cal shook his head each time a servant offered food. The portions were too small, pointless. The other guests didn't share his view. They seemed content to consume these minuscule scraps while maintaining an air of being better than everyone else. Not going to try anything? Shay asked as she popped a biscuit layered with cheese and cured ham into her mouth. It's not bad, she added, swallowing her food without so much as chewing. Seems pointless, Cal replied. It'll just end up making me hungrier. It's not about getting full, Cal. It's about being seen. Again, she waved at someone, at no one. Lucky for us, more eyes are on me than you. Guess not all illusions require gift, he nodded and gave an awkward smile to a small group watching Shay. Now you're getting it. A smooth voice cut through the chatter around them. Would you look at that, Darla? It appears my coming here wasn't a complete waste of time after all. Cal whipped his head to the side, his scowl returning as Dredge, draped in finery and a smile, sauntered toward them. Darla stood at his side, her ball gown doing nothing to soften her imposing frame. Cal grabbed Shay's wrist as she lunged forward. She twisted free and kept her glare locked on Dredge. You bastard, she seethed. You sold us out. Dredge cocked his head and then let out a short, derisive chuckle. Of course you'd believe so. I guess it's true what they say, Darla. True coincidences in life are rare. What are you talking about? Cal asked, flicking his gaze to Darla, who had positioned herself between Dredge and Shay. Even without a weapon, Darla looked strong enough to snap Shay in half. For a second, Cal considered how entertaining that showdown would be. It seems we both got played. A rat among the rats, you might say. Dredge swept two wine flutes from a passing tray, offering one to Shay. When she refused, Dredge shrugged and downed the contents of the first glass. Prefect flooded my domain not long after your departure. Rather a shame, too. I was quite fond of that location. Why should we believe you? Shay's voice was icy, but her posture loosened. Do I give off the impression that I'm trying to convince you? Believe me or not, it matters little to me. Why come here if your hideout was raided? Cal asked. A prime location it may have been, but that hideout was just one of many. A man in my position diversifies, you see. Dredge gestured to the gala. And diversification comes in many forms. He sipped his second wine flute while handing the empty one to Darla, who shoved it into the chest of a passing server. Now you know why I am here. But why are you here? And more importantly, how are you here? He directed his question more to Cal than to Shay. That's got nothing to do with you, Shay snapped. But I disagree, Miss Shay. You two would not have come if not to engage in some form of rebellion, and such misguided attempts could threaten the lives of those here. Most importantly, my own. Misguided? Shay's voice dropped. Dredge smirked, either ignoring or not recognizing the threat in Shay's response. If your hideout fell, then any survivors would need to vacate the city. Survivors that would surely be hunted down unless some sort of distraction could be caused. Enter Miss Shay, and the... He paused mid-thought, tapping his chin. Are you here to fulfill your namesake, Chainbreaker? Cal stayed silent. Dredge wasn't the type to act without gain. Whether he was being truthful about his hideout or not, his presence complicated things. Outing Cal and Shay to the nearest prefect would be easy for him, beneficial even. So why hadn't he? No, Dredge continued, studying Cal. You don't remember how you did it before. You said so yourself. What then? What valuable thing here could be worth sacrificing your lives for? He paused again, looking between Cal and Shay, his lips parting slightly. Oh, I see. It's not a thing, is it? It's a who. Darla tensed, flexing the muscles in her shoulders as Cal stepped forward, his hand drifting toward his concealed blade. Dredge tapped the side of his cheek, deep in thought. Yes, that could work for the both of us. He recomposed himself, straightened his long blue jacket, and pressed a hand into Darla's shoulder. Come, Darla, let us mingle before the real festivities kick off. He bowed low to Shay, nodded to Cal. Good luck. Cal watched Dredge latch himself onto another group, his chameleon-like charm almost impressive. Almost. After a few seconds, Shay tugged Cal closer to the unguarded corridor. Judgmental gazes followed them. Their conversation with Dredge had drawn too much attention. As they slipped into the corridor, Cal swore to himself that he'd never complain about a slum district again. Do you think he'll sell us out? Shay whispered, checking to make sure they were out of earshot. No. Cal kept his eyes on Dredge's retreating figure. I think he wants this to happen. Sees something in it for himself, I guess. But what, though? We can worry about that later. Right now? Cal checked around a nearby corner for any sign of prefect activity. We need to secure the way out of here. Shay nodded and began trying the handle of a few doors that lined the corridor, her effort receiving the rattle of a lock each time. Any thoughts? Tram into the Bay Area, Cal said. Shortest distance back to the city, and it bypasses the inner ring. A door creaked open. Shay pulled Cal in, closing it behind with as little noise as possible. The room, someone's office, was cluttered. A desk strewn with papers, shelves crammed with scrolls and leather-bound books. Shay skimmed the papers. Got any clue how we're going to pull this off? Feels stupid to mention how outmatched we are right now. Two of us, again, and a whole lot of them. And it figures a matriarch would be potent, right? No regular gift user gets that kind of special treatment. Right, Cal paced, eyeing the bric-a-brac that adorned the desk. The golden letter openers, the seat of dark oak with lavish red upholstery. More wealth in this room than he'd seen in a lifetime. More reminders that he belonged to this world even less than his regular one. He stopped mid-step, laughing. Care to let me in on the joke? Shay asked. Cal stood straight, his borrowed doublet straining against his chest. How about we start our grand distraction with a slightly smaller one? Shay's puzzled look shifted into one of recognition. Be too seen? Exactly, Cal said. I cause a scene outside, commit some kind of social indecency or another. Not too difficult for you, Shay winked. And while everyone has their attention on me, you can slip into whatever the matriarch is hiding and take her out. It could work, but first we need to find out where the matriarch is. Good point. Maybe there's something in here that'll. A loud banging interrupted them. Is somebody in there? Party guests are not allowed in the restricted areas. A prefect's voice barked through the door. Open up now. As the prefect entered the room, his hand on the pommel of his sheathed sword, Shay collapsed into Cal's arms. She leaned her weight against him, her arms swaying loosely at her side. This area is off limits. What are you doing here? Shay tilted her head toward the guard and let out a slurred chuckle. Oh, he was just finding a private spot for a bit. It's been too long since I had a strong hand on me. As she finished her slurred tirade, she pushed herself off Cal and into the chest of the prefect. You look more my type anyway. The prefect recoiled, grabbing her arm. I don't think so. Both of you, out! Now! Shay giggled as she pulled herself free of the prefect's grasp. If neither of you want me, I'm sure I can find another man to entertain me. Or maybe a woman. She turned and stumbled out of the door, falling to the floor in a less than graceful slump. Ow, she feigned. The prefect scoffed. Get up, harlot. I've no patience for. Cal locked an arm around the prefect's throat and pulled tight. After a few seconds of grunting and flailing, the prefect's body fell limp. Cal waited a second longer just to be sure, and then dropped the unconscious man to the floor. Shay stood, brushing off her dress. Why did you do that? I had everything under control. Couldn't take the risk. Plus, he called you a harlot. So, you've called me worse. Shay crossed her arms and raised her eyebrow at Cal. The other prefects will notice he's missing. This has just stepped up our timeline. Well then, let's not waste time arguing. Help me hide him, and then we can start searching for information on the matriarch. They stuffed the prefect into a large armoire, scattering its contents. Then, a voice boomed from the direction of the grand hall. A voice Cal could never forget. A voice that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Cal trembled as he stared up at the mezzanine. He swallowed against the tailored collar of his doublet. It seemed tighter than before. His chain scar pulsed like a second heartbeat. Shay dug her fingers into his arm, the only person not gazing up. Around them, the crowd beamed at the man addressing them, lapping up his honeyed lies. To Cal, this man's words were muffled. It didn't matter. Everything that snake said was a performance, a leash to keep people docile. The longer Cal stared, the more intense his chain scar burned. Pins and needles crawled up his forearm. His vision blurred at the edges, tunneling until only the man remained. The Lord Inquisitor. Behind him, dressed in a white gown stitched with golden runes and wearing her typical mask, stood the matriarch. Cal had never seen her in person, and now that he wasn't impressed. For the so-called mother of Udens, she looked small, shoulders hunched, hands clasped together. Just another puppet, another lie. The people deserved better than her. Shay tugged his arm, pulling him close. We need to go, she whispered. Cal tilted his head, eyes still locked on the matriarch. Anger simmered in his chest, duller than the inferno the Lord Inquisitor stoked. What about her? We wait until he's gone. Then we make our move. Shay's grip tightened. Cal jerked his head toward her, nostrils flaring. Cal, she pleaded, cupping his face. We can't. He's not the target. Not tonight. But he searched her eyes, desperate for an excuse to lunge. For years he'd promised himself that the moment he saw that bastard, he'd strike. No waiting, no hesitation. He'd strike and make him feel the same hurt. Please, we can't take him alone. Shay released him, stepping back just enough for the space to sting. There'll be another chance. I promise. Cal breathed deep. The Lord Inquisitor finished his speech and gestured for the matriarch to step forward. Her voice washed over him like a soothing balm applied to an open wound. Gratitude, kindness, the kind he hadn't known in years. The throb of his chain scar eased. For a heartbeat, his resolve faltered. He shoved the bubbling anger, the guilt, down and nodded to Shay, allowing her to guide him through the crowd. Steps from an adjoining corridor, the air shifted, and the crowd fell silent. Around them, prefects drew their blades but did not advance. Nearby partygoers gave them a wide berth. Shay dropped the shadows that hid their weapons, and Cal's jagged blade was drawn in a flash. His chain scar reignited as he whipped around and heard the voice of his enemy once again. Welcome, Chain Breaker. Uh-oh. Hello, Barbette. How are you tonight? If you're still here with me, let's see. What did we have somebody coming in? This is too cringe. You're reading out too hard. Sigh. Americans ruin everything. Oh, thank you, AI moderator. Overdoing it again. Toodles. You gotta love people. Tell me, guys, am I overdoing it? Or am I doing it just the right amount? Do people not know how audiobooks work? Yes. I know. Well, I knew you'd been here for a while, Barbette, but I can't comment while I'm recording the chapter, which is why I waved at you. I gave you the little head nod. Oh yeah, I figure it's just another one of those nice online trolls that love to show up and say nasty things for absolutely no reason. But I don't get to listen to it from your guys' side, so maybe my sound was too high. Maybe my emotions were too strong. Maybe Shay was too. Yep. Exactly, my friend. Exactly. All right, guys. So we've seen two perspectives as we got here. Ovette, we probably saw this coming, is the matriarch. Cal came to the gala to kill the matriarch, who just happens to be his childhood best friend, the love of his life, whatever you want to call her, the one who he was sure was dead. Of course, he doesn't know who Ovette is yet, but Ovette just found out that Cal is here, and Cal is alive. Oh, yeah. Now, let's find out what happens now that Cal has been unmasked as a chainbreaker by the Lord Inquisitor. As we start into 21. Cal watched as the hand dragged the matriarch away from the lip of the mezzanine. The mission's window was closing, but it wasn't over yet. If he held everyone's attention on him, here in the Citadel's Grand Hall, then Shay might be able to slip away and finish what they came here to do. Pain flared in his arm, sharp enough to blur his vision, dull his mind. The Lord Inquisitor's gaze bore into him, stoking an anger that threatened to boil over. Back to back with Shay, he pushed his weight into her. "You need to go. The matriarch is on the move." "I'm not leaving you here," she hissed back. "Yes, you are. Disguise yourself as one of the crowd and go." Her muscles tensed. They both knew the odds. One of them had to stay, and Cal would be damned if it was her. Around them, prefects and patrons stood frozen, some exchanging nervous glances, others clutching each other. Cal kept his glare locked on the Lord Inquisitor, whose own expression remained passive, bored even. "Deal with them," the Lord Inquisitor said. Without a word, the hand stepped off the mezzanine. The marble floor cracked under its weight as it landed into crouch. For a moment, it remained kneeling before its head snapped up, and the inhuman creature brought itself to standing, unharmed. The crowd erupted into chaos, scattering in all directions. Cal grabbed Shay's shoulders and heaved her into the stream of frenzied patrons. Continuing his momentum, he spun, blades flashing, and lunged forward. The hand sidestepped at the last second and drove its armored boot into Cal's ribs. Air rushed out of his body as he tumbled over himself, lungs burning as he gasped for breath. The hand wasted no time in firing a blast of sickly green gift. Cal's arm shook as he deflected it into a nearby statue. Pain spidered up from his chain scar, weakening his grip on the jagged blade. A voice boomed in his skull, the same voice he'd heard in the hideout, the same voice he'd heard all those years ago in Ignis Citadel. The hand's blade snapped toward his head. Cal twisted aside, his jagged blade scraping a shallow gouge across its thigh plate. He locked blades with the creature, close enough to smell it. Decayed, putrid flesh, the waxy reek of chemicals. Its armor drank in the light around it, an imposing mass of malice and metal, save for a fresh seam that glinted across its breastplate as Cal broke free. He ducked low and jabbed out with the jagged blade, twisting in with his dagger as the hand deflected the initial strike. The dagger's tip scraped across the seam, and for the first time, the hand retreated, guarding its chest. Cal pressed this small advantage, feinting with the jagged blade. But the hand parried it to the side, threw out its elbow, and came within inches of shattering Cal's nose. Fear prickled through Cal. His opponent's strikes lacked flair, lacked any form of blade art, but they more than made up for it with brutality and raw strength. The precision of its swing, the snap of its defense, and the cold calculation of its movement, the oncoming assault was relentless. Cal gave ground. His arms trembled with each impact. His footing was clumsy and desperate. He was losing. Sooner or later, the hand's obsidian blade would find its mark. He brought up the jagged blade into the path of an overhead swing, but his arm faltered on impact. He'd stopped the brunt of the blow, but metal still sank into his flesh. Pain blazed through his shoulder. He pushed as hard as he could against the hand, giving himself the smallest of openings to disengage. Blood pooled beneath his doublet. The strike hadn't cut deep, but the shallow gouge still stung. Cal forced his breath steady. He'd learned years ago that fear was as deadly as any blade. Getting close and unnerve a target. Show them that their gift did not make them invincible. But right now, it was he who felt the sharp edge of fear. Throwing himself at the hand wasn't going to work. It was faster than him, stronger than him. didn't shy from pain the way he did. While Cal gasped for a breath that he'd been one step behind this entire fight, the hand stood motionless, guard up, and ready. He shook his head. His fear was born of a desire to best his opponent, to win, to live. But winning didn't matter. Only buying time for Shay did. Cal calmed the frantic panic in his fingertips. He closed his eyes and blocked out everything other than the hand. If this were to be his end, then he would make his opponent work for it. The hand struck again with frightening speed. Cal redirected its blade into the floor and rammed his shoulder into the creature's chest. It staggered but recovered quickly, reasserting its stance for another round of attacks. Cal settled into this new rhythm: deflect, counter, survive. His strikes chipped at the hand's armor but did little else. This delicate dance allowed Cal to conserve his stamina, but his endurance wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, his luck was going to run out. Backed against one of the grand hall's garish paintings, Cal lashed out at the hand's gift fire. The arcane projectile ricocheted off his blade and struck a nearby statue. Cal threw up his arms to cover his eyes as sculpted marble exploded in all directions. Cold, metallic fingers clasped around his throat, wrenching him forward and slamming him against the painting's frame. White-hot pain burst through the back of his head, and his blades clattered to the floor. Cal clawed at the hand's grip, kicking and squirming, pain sparking as his knees slammed into metal. The stench of the hand smothered him. Above, the Lord Inquisitor raised a hand. The pressure on Cal's throat eased, enough to let him gasp in a burning breath. "A commendable effort," the Lord Inquisitor said. "Few have lasted so long against my son. Perhaps I was wrong to underestimate the threat you posed." A prefect rushed to his side, speaking with hushed urgency. The Lord Inquisitor's expression darkened. He leaned forward, resting his weight on the mezzanine's lip. "It would seem your dear companion has been captured. Tell me where the remainder of your rodent friends are hiding, and I shall consider letting her live." Cal thrashed, but the hand remained motionless, more statuesque than the ones it stood next to. "Failure to comply will only result in both your deaths. Your actions may yet save her life. Isn't that what you fought so valiantly for?" The fear in Cal's chest twisted hotter. Different. It strained his muscles. His forearm burned. The Lord Inquisitor's voice faded beneath another, one that whispered malice and rage into his mind. He thought of Ovette, of revenge. "Oh well, perhaps she will be more compliant," the Lord Inquisitor sighed. "Kill him." Cal's empty hand twitched, not reaching, but receiving, as a jagged blade's hilt met his palm. The weight of it came first, then the cold bite of metal against skin. With a roar, he drove it upward, through the hand's throat and into its skull. The Lord Inquisitor's scream echoed as Cal slumped to the floor, gasping for air. The voice in his head howled, flooding him with pain, showing him images of Shay's broken body lying amidst a wreath of white gift fire. "Shay," he gritted his teeth, forcing the presence back. The pain in his arm remained, but the room sharpened into focus. He dragged himself to his feet, bracing against a statue. Shay needed him. He dared a glance up at the mezzanine. It was empty. The Lord Inquisitor had vanished, along with his chance for revenge. The hand lay motionless, like a discarded doll, its malice gone, hollow. Cal turned toward the corridor. Something pulled him forward, an unseen tether guiding him to Shay. The closer he got, the more the voice in his head pushed. Someone, or something, could see him, watched him, and it knew he was coming. Unknowable words pounded in Cal's skull, less speech than raw emotion. The world fractured each time he closed his eyes. One moment, he stumbled through a corridor, his body splitting at the seams, as if something were trying to escape. The next, he stood amid fleeing patrons, prefects sprawled in pools of the same red slick that stained his hands and blades. A woman dressed in servant's garb, finer than the rest, wailed in fear as she darted past. Each flash of Shay in his mind brought forward a storm. Panic seared his nerves. Rage twitched his muscles. Fear drove him forward. Hatred compelled him to act. He moved with a will not his own. Ahead, something throbbed. The same darkness and malice that coiled in his mind now hung in the air, thick enough to choke him. It dragged him forward into a cavernous chamber. Before the titanic chain, a woman clad in white battled a flickering shadow. The shadow bobbed and weaved between blasts of gift so blinding they seared his vision. Heavy fingers gripped tight around the blade in his hand. It quivered, hungry, aching to bury its jagged teeth in that shifting darkness. He lurched forward, then crashed to his knees. Muffled words. The shadow was speaking to him, taunting him, trying to unnerve him. His purpose crystallized. Protect the light. No. Destroy the shadow. A scream tore from his throat. Ka! The shadow's voice cut through, louder. A word. A name. His name. Cal. His head roared with fire. He clawed at the invading presence, heat surging up his arm. Invisible talons groped for his mind. Cal, I need you. The shadow's voice. Familiar. Too familiar. A softer voice came next, one he could never forget. Cal? The presence faltered, enough for Cal to wrest control and anchor himself in the one thing he knew. Anger, clean and sharp. The shadow dissolved, revealed a battered Shay. Blood from a deep gash soaked her side, her dagger trembling in her grip. The illusion of another flickered and died in her other hand. She was beyond the point of exhaustion. Cal? The matriarch's voice, the soft voice, the target's voice. Cal exploded into action. He twisted beneath a plume of white fire and swung the jagged blade into the path of a second blast. The gift detonated on impact with the blade, scorching his arm. Not the chain scar's heat, but something purer, something purging. Ears ringing, he staggered to his feet and charged again. Cal, stop! He wove through more of the matriarch's panicked burst of gift fire, every muscle alight. Instincts heightened his senses. This was it. Her life or his. Cal, please. His knee drove into her gut. She gasped as the air rushed out of her mask falling loose as she crumbled. Yanking her up, he slammed her against the chain, brought his blade to her throat, and tears streaked the matriarch's face. Her stark white hair tumbled free. Cal's rage vanished. Not the matriarch. Not the target. Ovette? Ovette's body jerked. Cal ripped the jagged blade back, but not fast enough. An obsidian tooth grazed her neck. Gift erupted from her palms, boring holes into the floor, turning it into molten slag. Adrenaline returned to Cal in a fresh wave, and he threw his arms around Ovette as if to take her pain into himself. A thin, ghost-like chain flickered in his periphery, taut behind her. Memories surged. Ovette screaming, Igny's chain, Leif's blade. Shay stirred, forcing herself upright. By the tides! Her gaze flicked from Ovette to Cal. He stared back at her. She knew what he was about to do. She knew the choice he was going to make. Cal, you can't. The maelstrom. Thousands will die. I know. His scar flared white-hot, pain screaming up his arm as he severed the ethereal tether that bound Ovette. The broken chain flailed wildly. It lashed around his arm, its links burning through flesh into bone. Cal screamed, a raw, wordless release as fire erupted in his body. The presence in his mind howled, and darkness swallowed the room. Only the gargantuan chain remained, now studded with 1,000 eyes. Their gaze crushed him, pushed the life out of him. Their voice roared through him. Traitor! Cal drove the jagged blade into the chain, wrenched. The blade snapped. The chain sundered. Silence. Then the world around him detonated. Ah, Cal, now you've destroyed 2 chains. 2. Ah, ah, ah. 2 chains. Ah, ah, ah. 1, 2, 2 chains. Ah, ah, ah. Ah. Go, Cal. It's your birthday. You're gonna party like it's your birthday. All right. Are we ready, everyone? It is time to find out what happens after a second chain is sundered and what happened to his broken blade. I guess we will know soon enough. Here we go with 22. Cal's head rang like a bell. The room pitched and rolled as he pushed upright. The taste of iron flooded his mouth. Shay and Ovette lay to his side, Shay's fingers twitching against the floor, Ovette's body motionless. A crash snapped his focus upward. Eunice's chain, once as immovable as the citadel itself, now whipped about like a beheaded serpent. Its links screeched against the walls, each convulsion ripping chunks of stone loose. Debris smashed into the floor. Cal scrambled to his hands and knees, blood pounding. The floor bucked beneath him. Nausea rose with each lurching movement as he crawled toward Shay and Ovette. Shay, up! He gripped her shoulder. The steady rise and fall of her chest eased his thumping pulse, but the seeping wound on her forehead glistened wet. The jagged blade lay near Ovette. He crawled toward it, gut churning. From the chain's death throes or blood loss, he told himself. Not from her. His hand froze halfway to the blade. His chain scar was gone. In its place, blackened flesh that stole the light. Cold. Numb. He prodded it, flexed fingers that moved at his command, yet felt nothing. No pain. Nothing. It was like wearing another man's skin. He snatched the broken blade, now more charred than jagged, and ripped strips from his doublet. He wound the makeshift bandages around Shay's head, then his arm. The ceiling exploded. Salt wind howled through the new gap as the chain's remains shattered. Cal heaved himself upright, grunting and slipping as he dragged Shay to Ovette's side. His legs shook, threatening to give way beneath him as the room crumbled around them. He smashed his fist into the floor, blooding his blackened fingers. No impact, no pain. Just a hoarse scream tore from his throat. Shay had pulled him back from the edge after Igni. She'd kept him human when the scars burned, when the guilt made him less than. He owed her everything. Ovette, alive, after everything. The reason he'd doomed thousands, doomed himself. He couldn't take both. I'm sorry. The whispers strangled his throat as he slid his arms beneath Ovette. His muscles shrieked as he lifted her. Tears streamed without permission. Each step toward the doorway was like wading through tar. No adrenaline fueled him, just grief, heavy as the body in his arms. And it wasn't enough. His injured body gave way. He twisted as they fell, taking Ovette's weight in his chest. His ribs creaked, breath came in ragged gulps. Cal? Shay groaned, her voice faint through the din. In here! A voice shouted from the doorway. Deep, powerful, feminine. They're in here! Dark arms reached through his blurring vision that soon gave way to nothingness. Well, that was a short chapter. But now we get into some interludes. You like the interludes, don't you? I don't know what they'll mean, but let's find out, shall we? As we start, Interlude 2, Lord Inquisitor Sius. Sius stepped into one of Sanctum Spire's innermost chambers, a large tome under his arm. He set the tome down with a thud and turned to the corpse lying atop the room's only table. He hissed through his nose as he flipped through the tome's pages, his jaw set firm. Several robed figures hunched over the corpse, inserting long needles attached to even longer tubes that disappeared into the ceiling. Sia scowled at these figures as the reek of their decaying bodies clotted the room. The grating rasp of their breathing was unsettling. He had little love for dread thralls and loathed the idea that he needed their aid. Mindless servants, once enemies of the Davan Empire, carrying out the dread's will. If it were up to him, they would never have been called to Eudos. Their presence tainted Sanctum Spire, allowing more of the dread through than Sius preferred. The presence of the dread disrupted the balance that he strived to maintain. His master knew no constraint, only endless hunger. Given the chance, it would consume Eudos without hesitation, and all that Sius had spent his long years building would crumble. Here, in a land not his own, he had made a place for his family. Part of him longed for the plains surrounding the City of Iron, the vast open spaces he and Hephaestus had explored as children. But those days were gone. Long gone. He had a new life, one that came with a grand purpose. As Lord Inquisitor, he had fostered stability, peace, fragile yet preserving, a peace now threatened by the emergence of this chain breaker and his little rebellion. At first, they had been little more than a nuisance, a distraction for the populace that afforded him ample opportunity to showcase the security that the Davan Empire could offer. Their feeble attempts at overthrowing Davan authority, including severing Igni's chain, had only strengthened his message. But no longer. The chainbreaker had done the impossible again. Eunice's chain had been destroyed, and his control over that city was slipping. No natural disaster to shift blame this time. And worse, the chainbreaker had managed to take his son away from him. Sia slammed his fist into the tome stand with a crack. The dread thralls did not look up from their task. They didn't have the capacity for fear. Their lives weren't theirs to give. "Leave us," Sias seethed. The thralls finished poking and prodding the corpse, binding its limbs with cracked leather straps before filing out in silence, leaving only their stench behind. Sia studied the corpse, grimaced at the fresh stitching in its neck. He would not underestimate the chainbreaker again. He would not allow him to take his son from him again. But Sias had a plan. The boy showed signs of the dread's corruption, lapses in focus, bursts of anger, speed, and agility on par with any full-fledged inquisitor. Likely a consequence of his actions with the chains. A consequence that Sias could use to his advantage. Turn the rebellion's savior into its greatest threat. Suppressing his own bubbling rage, he refocused and willed his brand to life. Gift thrummed in the chamber, warping the air above the corpse. With his other hand, Sias traced a passage in the tome and spoke the words that allowed the dread to work through him. It wasn't long before he felt invisible claws rake his skin. Malice for this realm slithered through him. It tugged at his spark of life and made it difficult to concentrate. Sias guided this malice toward the corpse, asking for what is most precious to him to be returned. The malice paused, considering, demanded a tithe. Steeling himself, Sias promised it a new host, one younger and more agile, stronger than anything Sias had offered before, a host already touched by its influence. For an eternity-long moment, the malice weighed his offer. Then its clawed grip sprang forward, latching itself onto the corpse. Sias flicked his wrist, and a white, wisp-like substance began to slither through the tubes above. The corpse twitched as this substance flooded its veins. Sias held his breath as his master's malice seeped into his son's chest. Then, with a rasping moan, the corpse jerked upright, straining against the table straps. Sias placed his hand on his son's chest, met his milky eyes, and sighed. "Welcome back, Corsius." The dread. We finally have another foe bigger than the Lord Inquisitor. The dread, the master, who wants to destroy the world of Eudos. Now, time for Interlude 3. Leif. Leif ran as fast as his aging legs could carry him, his blade gripped tight in his hand. Igni's uneven streets and his lack of familiarity with the district set his nerves on edge. He seldom missed his military days, but even he had to admit the strict training regimen had kept him strong. Years of self-imposed exile from the Davan Empire had taken their toll, and the short distance from his orphanage to the Ember's lava wall left an unwelcome burn in his side. He weaved and shoved through a morass of townsfolk, their faces stricken with terror. The clang of steel filled the air ahead, and the sky was illuminated by brilliant flashes of white. Whoever was fighting was putting on one heck of a show. As he rounded the last corner, a ball of white gift fire slammed into the wall to his right, bathing his cheek with heat. Instinct drove him forward, knees tucking into his chest. The roll was clumsy, out of practice, but it carried him from immediate danger and closer to the fray. The fighting was fierce, wild, desperate. A ring of inquisitors, some further along in ascension than others, yet all clad in the Order's jet-black armor, encircled a man and a woman. The sight of their spiked, rugged armor sent cold tendrils down Leif's spine, a reminder of the life he was trying to leave behind. The man in the center knelt, dressed in the same armor, his bloodied hand clutched at his side. The woman stood a few paces away, wreathed in gift. White flame, prismatic and brilliant, coiled around her left arm as if she were its living embodiment. In her other arm, she cradled a small bundle of blue cloth against her chest. The Gyfted. It had been a long time since Leif had seen one of her kind. Not long enough for the pain to be forgotten. Nothing he did would ever erase those memories. But he had made a promise, and he was still a man of honor. Recovering from his fumbled roll, Leif charged at the nearest inquisitor and drove his sword through its back. Age had worn him down to a shell of his younger self, but it hadn't dulled his talent for killing. The other inquisitors reacted too late. Leif was on to the next before he could get his guard up. Though one, likely seasoned with giftling kills, parried just in time. Leif ignored the ache in his muscles and forced the blade down. His foe held firm, but his grunt of exertion quickly morphed into a guttural scream as white flames licked across his body. He died writhing while the Gyfted yanked her gift fire back into her palm and hurled it into the face of another assailant. Her male counterpart drove back the last two inquisitors that approached from his right. His obsidian blade cleaved through the first, but fatigue and injury turned his second swing heavy and inexact. Leif lunged to his side, parrying a killing blow. He twisted free from the sword bind, brought his blade back, and rammed it into the inquisitor's chest. Black ichor spilled down its chest plate, and it snarled as it raised its blade for a counterblow, only for white gift fire to snake around its limbs, binding and burning at once. Leif yanked his blade free, and the inquisitor collapsed with a thump, a sickly familiar stench rising from its corpse. Behind him, the injured man dropped to one knee, blood gushing from his side. His eyes were wild, but not with fear. Leif Estes, I'm sorry. We had nowhere else. His words trailed off, and he slumped to the ground, coughing blood and black ichor. In his final moments, his gaze turned to the woman and the bundle of blue cloth she held. Please. Corsius, what have you done? Leif closed the eyes of his former student, a man he'd once been proud to call his protege, and arranged his hands across his chest, one above the other. Rest easy, old friend. May the dread never find you. With a heavy heart, Leif took Corsius's sword and turned to the woman in white. Dark red stains had soiled her gown, giving her a haunting beauty. The scorched, cracked walls of the surrounding buildings hinted at the level of power her gift had given her. Gyfted were rare, and rarer still to be seen outside of the citadels. Their fate was sealed the moment their abilities manifested. The bundle in her arms mewled tiny murmurs. With shaking arms, she held it out, her smile wavering as she labored through each breath. Leif dropped the swords and cradled the bundle's weight with care. The blue cloth fell away, revealing tiny hands with tiny fingers that grasped at the air, and a pair of short, stumpy legs that kicked out as the baby yawned. The baby opened its eyes, and even so small and fragile, they held a fierceness that kindled warmth in Leif's heart. The woman stared up at him, her gaze just as fierce. No words were needed. The request was clear, as was his answer. Distant voices barked orders, drawing nearer. Panic filled Leif's throat. He looked down at the mewling bundle of innocence he held in his arms. In this child he saw his redemption, his chance to atone for the deaths he had caused, for all those with the gift he had once put to death. Leif, please. The woman's voice wavered once again as she fought to stay awake. As if my own. Thank you. Her head dropped, The brands on her hands and shoulders dimmed as the last vestiges of her gift slipped away. The veins of white beneath her skin ceased to pulse with power. Their name, Leif asked. What should I call them? With her eyes closed, the gifted smiled and whispered her baby's name. All right, what do you guys think? Is it going to be Ovette or is it going to be Cal? Who is the Lord Inquisitor's grandchild? Who is the one that Leifestus, Leif, has saved and raised as his own? Is it Ovette or is it Cal? I think it's Cal, but we don't know yet, do we? I imagine we'll find out. So let's continue on and see what we see as we start into 23. Cal. Relief efforts within the city are progressing well. My people have confirmed the maelstrom has indeed vanished, along with all traces of Eunice's chain. Red shifted through the reports laid out across his desk. Seated in his grandiose chair, behind an equally grandiose desk, he resembled an elegant lord more than an undercity crime boss. The Daven military is in an uproar. Inquisitor and Prefect alike are scouring the city for any sign of the Chainbreaker and his band of merry rebels. How is Jord, by the way? I hear Valewind can be quite pleasant, as long as you don't mind the odd messy hair day. If you're planning on turning us in, just get it over and done with, Cal replied. Dredge smiled back, easier than his usual serpent's grin, but no less threatening. The Davens underestimated you. They pegged the rebellion as little more than a nuisance. But not anymore. One could even say they're afraid of you. He stood and walked over to the room's sole window. Outside, trees and flowers that Cal had no name for swayed in the afternoon breeze, soaking up the sunlight in picturesque serenity. The bay had long been a popular area of Eunice for the wealthy to sequester themselves away, a refuge from the constant hub and bub of political machinations and social posturings. Though not far from the city proper, its serenity stood in stark contrast to the reports coming from the inner and outer rings. The chain had sundered the citadel, torn through the ancient stone, and collapsed the entire structure into the sea below. Yet Eunice itself had escaped the destruction relatively unharmed, save for the panic that had spread among its citizens like wildfire. The maelstrom. Why didn't it flood the city? With the chain gone, there was nothing holding it back. Cal's mind raced as the realization began to sink in. In Igni, I thought, that severing the city's chain triggered the volcano to erupt? Dredge interrupted. You and most other Udens, it would seem. Spewed straight from the mouth of the Lord Inquisitor and happily gobbled up by the masses. But not you. I had my suspicions. Theories about the link between the chains and the supposed natural phenomena of our realm. Theories that stood far from the accepted rhetoric. Cal didn't know what to think, what to feel. He'd carried the weight of Igni's destruction with him for years. He'd let the death of the embers mold him into the person he believed necessary for his vengeance. The Lord Inquisitor had played him, had played everyone. What happens now? Cal asked. That is up to you to decide, and it's a decision that you should make quickly. Dredge turned from the window, his focus sharpening on Cal. What do you mean? Plush leather creaked as Cal shifted under Dredge's gaze. Everyone, the prefects, the Davens, the people, I'll wait with bated breath to see what you do next, Chainbreaker. I never meant to break the chain. I was there to. Cal trailed off, not able to bring himself to say the words. Kill the matriarch? Dredge cocked his head. Oh, my apologies. I meant the gifted. The realization struck Cal like a punch to the gut. Did you know? I did. Why didn't you tell me? Cal's chair toppled over as he stood. His arm burned as he clenched his fists. Dredge didn't back away, didn't so much as blink. Because I knew what you would choose to do instead. That beneath this veneer of rage and self loathing beats the heart of a man willing to risk his life for others. The words caught Cal off guard. The tingle in his arm and the heat in his chest cooled. That is what this people need, Cal. That is what will galvanize them. Not petty raids or childish wailing about rights and freedom in the Select Council. You almost sound like you care. Dredge resumed his seat. And why would I not? I am a man of principle, after all. Well then, why haven't you helped the rebellion more? Why make us jump through hoops? Do not forget, I am a businessman first. The rise of the Chainbreaker will inevitably draw the attention of the Daven Empire. Attention that, in more peaceful times, would fall on the city's other criminal elements. We fight, well, you get rich. That it? Crude, but more or less accurate. The rebellion could use your resources. You owe. I owe nothing to no one, Dredge snapped. He adjusted his collar, pulled at the sides of his waistcoat, looking a mix of sheepish and frustrated. I have done more than my part in this. Do not forget that it was my men and I who pulled you out of the Citadel. And I'm supposed to believe you did that out of the kindness of your heart? Haven't you been listening? Your actions are going to be watched with scrutiny from here on out. Even now, prefects and inquisitors scour the city looking for any sign of you. Dredge aligned the papers on his desk, then cleared his throat and locked eyes with Cal. Which is why you will be leaving my estate today. I've already arranged for a boat to take you to Gale's End. From there, you can arrange passage into Valewind yourself. Cal started to protest, but a swift hand from Dredge cut him off. This is not charity. A man in my position stays in his position through reputation and reputation alone. The fact remains, whether through my own personal involvement or not, your hideout was attacked following a deal with me. This calls my reputation into question. I cannot be seen to be untrustworthy. Cal arched his eyebrow in surprise. Down in the muck, you need to know who to deal with, and who's likely to stab you in the back. Think whatever you will of me, but believe me when I say that when I stab you, you'll be the first to see it coming. Dredge spoke with grim certainty, more promise than veiled threat. Helping us get out of the city proves you didn't stab us in the back. Dredge smiled. You're not as dim as you look. We can't leave today. Shay needs rest, and Ovette. Cal's jaw clenched at the thought of Ovette in the estate cellar, chained to the wall like an animal. She hasn't woken up yet. Not my problem. Dredge's tone chilled. An escort shall guide you to the boat. After that, you fend for yourself. Cal planted his hand on Dredge's desk and leaned forward. I could make it your problem. Behind him, Darla's warhammer thudded against the floorboards. Cal had forgotten she was even there. Dredge's ever-watchful guard dog. Dredge stayed her with a gesture, then steepled his fingers. Don't forget who you're talking to, Chainbreaker. I haven't. Cal's gut churned at the thought of what he was about to offer. You said your reputation keeps you in power. Well, think what your rivals would say if they heard about the Chainbreaker owing you a personal favor. Dredge leaned forward, his grin widening. Such a reputation would behoove me to collect on that debt someday. You sure you want to get into bed with someone like me, boy? Cal kept his face stone. I don't have much choice. Deal. Dredge reclined into his seat, looking mighty pleased with himself. Cal sank to his own, the churn in his gut flipping over and over. I'll inform my men that you're not to be disturbed while you're here. And as an added bonus, I'll even have someone take a look at that arm of yours. Dredge nodded at Cal's blackened arm. Cal had almost forgotten about the changes to it. The numbness had pushed the change to the back of his mind. Time would tell if this transformation was for better or worse. No thanks, Cal replied. I can take care of it. Suit yourself. Dredge signaled for Darla to come forward. Her meaty hand clamped onto Cal's shoulder, and he allowed himself to be escorted out of the room. I expect to be repaid in full, Cal. Dredge called after him. Remember, reputation is everything. Dredge's people ignored Cal as he wandered the halls. They didn't look like the thugs that had occupied his lower domain. Most wore the lifeless gray of hollow-born servants, a few here and there dressed in more fanciful servant attire. The estate itself contrasted with Lord Utikin's. It had more of a calmness to it. Typical Undis swirls and waves styling bleach white columns. A verdant central garden that invited long naps and lazy afternoons. The taste of ocean salt in the air. For someone raised near a volcano, where ash hung as thick as the crowds, this place bordered on paradise. Shay had been put up in a lavish guest room. Its trappings were marred only by a collection of soiled bandages on the large bed that dominated the space. A strip of clean bandage in her mouth, she pulled tight at the fresh wrappings on her arm, jerking her chin up in greetings as Cal entered. Need a hand again? Cal asked. Shay spat the bandage out of her mouth and huffed. Please. Cal worked the bandage around her arm, pulling it snug with as much care as possible. Dredge said we can stay here a few days while we gather our strength. He asked for anything in return? Cal tied the ends together and tucked them in between the bandage's folds. It would hold for a day or two, but would need replacing after that. Cal? No, Cal answered. Nothing. So, just like that, we can stay? No strings attached? Shay searched his face. Cal's stomach sank. No point in telling her. Wasn't her burden to bear. No strings. Right, Shay said, not convinced, but she didn't push the topic any further. Opportunities for respite would be few and far between in the days ahead. They both knew that. She'd be a fool not to take advantage of the situation. So we rest, and then what? Where's our next destination? Dredge said Jord and the others were heading to Valewind. Probably halfway there by now. Makes sense. His family has a few holdings there. A few ore mines in some of the deeper valleys. Plenty of places for us to hide, assuming we can get there. Dredge has that covered too. He's arranged for a boat to take us as far as Gale's End. From there, we can book passage on one of the airships heading further into the valley. Shay arched her eyebrow, her deepening mistrust of Dredge's apparent charity plain to see. He said his reputation is on the line. The attack on our hideout. Whether or not he did it, he feels obligated to help us. Shay lowered her eyebrow, but didn't wipe the skepticism from her face. As soon as we're all rested, we'll make for the boat. Shay stayed silent, staring at the ocean visible through the window. Have you spoken to her yet? No. The hollow in Cal's stomach opened into a pit. His fingertips tingled at the thought of facing Ovette. Not since the Citadel. Shay looked back, her expression wavering between concern and sorrow. Figured out what you're going to say to her? Cal snorted. Not a clue. Part of him was desperate to speak with her, to make sure that she was real and this wasn't some cruel illusion. The other part of him recoiled at the idea of Ovette seeing him, seeing who he had become in her absence, as if one look would tell her everything he'd become. Sighing, he pushed himself off the bed. No sense putting it off any longer. I'll go check if she's awake. I'm sure she's going to have a lot of questions about, well, everything. He opened the door to leave. I'll be back to check on you in a bit. Cal? Shay plucked at her bandage, gaze cast to the side. Yeah? Sorry for what I said before you cut the chain. With the maelstrom and everything. I know how important Ovette is to you. She stopped fiddling and met his eyes. How you'd do anything to keep her safe. The image of Shay and Ovette lying in the crumbling chain room flashed through Cal's mind. Shay, It's fine, Cal, Shay interrupted. It was a tough choice. She turned back to the window. You made the one you could live with. Cal stood in the doorway, his mouth open, but the words were absent. There was nothing he could say to her. It had been a tough choice, but no amount of rationalizing would ease the tightness in the back of his throat. It wasn't long before he decided the best thing he could do right now was to leave Shay alone with her thoughts. Besides, Guilt and Cal were old friends. Cal descended into the basement. The estate above, with its curated beauty, manicured gardens, and servants who knew the right time to curtsy or be unseen, was nothing more than a veneer. The stone halls beneath the foundations revealed the real Dredge, a man whose commerce was misery and torture as much as compliments and handshakes. Rows of cells stretched before him, their iron bars rusted in the sea salt air, stone walls slick with grime. Cal marveled at how accessible this area was. Did Dredge not fear the noise his guests would make down here? Or was that the point? Up top, he and the others like him could play socialite while screams rang out below. And yet, in his office, Dredge had spoken of galvanizing the people, of convincing them that their lives held worth. He'd sounded more like a rebel than Cal ever had. Cal stopped before Ovette's wooden cell door. She'd been placed in one of the more private rooms, for special guests, as Dredge had put it. His insides churned as he pushed the door open. The cell matched his expectations. A stone room with walls so close together they denied even the luxury of lying down. Light casting through a barred window that sat high enough out of reach for the average person, and a single bucket in the corner whose purpose Cal refused to consider. Ovette twitched at the creaking cell door, but she didn't lift up her head in greeting. She remained curled beneath the high window, head buried in her knees, her stark white hair hiding her expression. The rusted shackles clamped around her ankles tethered her to the wall, and a rune-etched collar hung around her neck, its pulsing glow in rhythm with her breathing. Cal stood frozen, as silent and still as the stale air that filled the space. Years of believing her dead, a near decade of punishing himself for a failure that was never real. He had a second chance to rebuild not only his relationship with her, but also himself. And all he could do was stand and stare. "Get out," her whisper echoed in the cell. "Leave me alone." Cal didn't move. She lifted up her head. Strands of hair that wa- hair the strands of her hair were caught in the collar's grasp, but she didn't wince. Her glare, through eyes red and puffy, made Cal recoil, dashing any small hope of immediate reconciliation. It laid him bare before her. He'd faced many who'd hated him, but he never imagined Ovette would look at him the same way, that he would stare into her eyes and see an enemy that wished him dead. "I've got nothing to say to you," Ovette's voice simmered. "You're nothing more than a thug, a killer, a terrorist." "I'm sorry," was all he could muster. "You're sorry?" she spat. "Sorry for what? All the people you've killed?" They didn't. How many families do you think you've torn apart? How many mothers and fathers have you slain in your noble quest for freedom, chain breaker?" Ovette remained still. Her arms didn't shake with rage or tremble with condemnation, and despite the charge of hatred in her words, her voice was calm. There was no need to scream, no need to shout. Both of them knew that the truth didn't need such display. Cal's blackened fingers twitched. The twitch set a pulse up his arm and into his chest. A single spurt of energy. The same surge he'd felt fighting the hand. Like he always felt when he was in danger. The feeling faded just as soon as it took root. "You're not a hero. You're not a savior." Ovette's words shook. "Pretend all you like. In the end, you're just a monster." Tears collected in the corner of his eyes. Her breath hitched. She swallowed hard and whispered three words that cut Cal deeper than any blade ever could. "I hate you." The room spun. Cal's stomach lurched. His mind raced with things he knew he should say, but couldn't. He didn't have the right words. Didn't have the guts. He reached into his shirt and pulled out her coin pouch, pulling on the string that held it around his neck. Her eyes darted to it as tears fell. Cal set her coin pouch on the floor of the cell. As he turned to leave, he said, "I know." The next 2 days passed in a blur. Cal welcomed the privacy Dredge's people had given him, leaving him well enough alone with his thoughts. Wallowing in self-pity wouldn't have helped anyone, so he spent his time studying the route to the boat, checking and rechecking the supplies Dredge had offered. They'd have to pass through the sewers again, but that didn't bother him so much. Stealth would serve them better than speed. His thoughts drifted to Jord and Artie and Valewind. Had they reached safety? It felt like forever since he'd spoken with either of them. So much had happened. He wondered what Ovette would say when she found out Jord was part of the rebellion too, and the de facto head of the Unicell, now that Barkus was... Barkus. Damn it. Cal's chest tightened. How long had it been since the attack on Eunice's hideout? Since Barkus was killed? And how many times had he offered a word of comfort or sympathy to Shay? Like him, she'd kept to herself, isolated with her grief. "You idiot," he said to himself. Cal walked to the door, then startled as he opened it and saw Shay. Hey, she said, fist raised mid-knock. Can I come in? Uh, yeah, course. Cal moved aside and allowed Shay to enter. She sat herself on the bed and scanned the room, tutting to herself whenever something took her fancy. Yours is nicer than mine, she said. Yes, being the chainbreaker has its perks. Cal watched her, waited for her to meet his gaze. She didn't. You're looking better, Cal said. Feel better, too. Her gaze lingered on the blade shard and dagger laid across the room's large lacquered table. Figures that'd break, too. You got everything you need? Cal asked. Pretty much. Shay met his eyes at last. Dredge has been true to his word about helping us out. Personally, I don't see how this helps him, but I figure that's his problem. Yeah, I guess he's got. Decided what you're going to do with Ovette? Shay interrupted. Cal shifted his gaze. Honestly, it might be better for us if we left her here. Shay leaned forward. I don't think staying with Dredge qualifies as better. We're rebels, Shay, and she is, or at the very least was, the enemy? Cal shot Shay a look. Don't act like you haven't thought about it as well, Cal. Her voice hardened. She was with him for 8 years. That's a long time. People change. You did. Cal sighed long and hard, as if to unwind the knot in his chest. A knock thumped on the door, and Darla entered without being asked. She gave Cal a look of disgust before snorting out what she'd come to say. Dredge wants you. His office. She left as abruptly as she'd come. Shay shrugged and left the room. Cal watched her go for a second before following behind Darla. Just a few more hours and he and Shay could be on their way. Distance would help clear his head. Dredge stared as Cal entered his office. Tapping his steepled fingers together, he gestured for Cal to take a seat opposite him. Thanks for letting us stay, Cal started. We'll be out of your hair in an hour or so. Dredge snickered while rummaging through a drawer. I'm merely upholding my end of our deal, Chainbreaker. Nothing more, nothing less. I know. Still, thanks. Cal slowed his breathing, resisted the urge to fidget in the chair. Any further details from our gifted guest? Drudge asked. Or has she remained unresponsive to your unique brand of charm? I haven't spoken with her. Not again, anyway. Is that so? Dredge sat back in his chair, toying with a folded piece of paper. Perhaps her tongue would loosen if I presented her with the right stimuli. Cal kept his face neutral, despite Darla's snort behind him. He'd be a fool to take Dredge lightly. But he was starting to get a feel for when the crime lord was being serious or not. Or at least, that's what Cal told himself. Actually, I was thinking of leaving without Ovette. This perked Dredge's attention. He stopped fiddling with the folded paper and leaned forward on his desk, giving Cal his full attention. Is that so? And what, pray tell, would lead you to such an ill-advised decision? She won't be safe with us. What makes you think she'll be safe with me? Cal steadied himself and leaned closer to the desk. Because I severed a chain to save her life, believing I would doom a city of thousands. Imagine what I'll do to you if anything happens to her. Darla's warhammer thudded into the floor with a crack. She grabbed Cal by his neck, hauling him clean out of his seat. "Threaten him again," she growled. "Darla!" Dredge's voice snapped like a whip. With a breathy grunt, Darla jerked her head at Dredge, then followed his gaze down to Cal's dagger pressed against her stomach. With another grunt, this one tinged with a hint of embarrassment, she dropped him. Hard. "That's not all, is it?" Dredge said as Cal righted himself. "You don't trust her." A vein in Cal's neck bulged as he tried to keep his cool. After a few seconds of intense searching, Dredge broke away his gaze, looking instead at the piece of paper between his fingers. "As entertaining as your threats are, I'm afraid the Gyfted remaining with me is out of the question. I have already endangered my operation by allowing you to remain here." Dredge flicked the folded paper across the desk. "My people within the city have informed me that the Inquisitors have now officially conducted a search for the rebels who murdered the matriarch." Cal's insides lurched as he unfolded the paper. 3 faces stared back at him. His, Shay's, and Ovette's, with the words "Wanted Dead" plastered across them in bold red ink. "Apparently the Gyfted, or the matriarch, is now more useful to the Lord Inquisitor. Dead," Dredge continued. This didn't make any sense. The Lord Inquisitor had kept Ovette safe for years. Used her, yes, but she had been safe in his care. Why would he order her to be killed? Dredge continued. "The Chainbreaker's attack on the Citadel and the matriarch's apparent murder is all the people can talk about. Chaos is bubbling beneath the surface. Cracks are starting to appear in the once indomitable Davian authority." Cal looked up from the poster. A chill crawled down his spine. "You backed the Lord Inquisitor into a corner. His latest move makes sense." The desk creaked as Dredge leaned even closer. "The realm is waiting for your next move, waiting for the final chain to be broken." Cal pushed the poster away. A tingle shot through his blackened arm. "I don't want anything to do with the chains. I never did." Dredge scoffed. "And yet you have done the impossible twice." His eyes flickered toward Cal's arm. "Seems the chains want something to do with you. Either way, the Gyfted cannot remain in Eunice. Believe it or not, she's much safer with you." Cal gestured toward the poster. "Even with this, I doubt she'll want to come with me." Dredge relaxed back in his chair, spreading his hands. "Then bind her, gag her, drag her by her lovely white hair if you have to. Either way, this is not my problem." "You know, Dredge, for someone who—" Cal paused. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to inhale. Then the explosion tore through the estate. Windows shattered and the ground shook as furnace-like heat flushed through Dredge's office. Beyond the smoke, white flames engulfed the garden outside. Cal's vision swam as he grabbed the desk for balance. Before he could right himself, the door burst inward and Shay crashed through, knocking Darla back down to the ground. "Ovette," she coughed, wiping dust and soot from her eyes. "She's gone." Cal's ears still rang from the explosion. He tried to blink the room back into focus. "Did you see where she was headed?" His voice sounded distant and muffled. Toward the city, Shay shouted. Ah! Cal shook the blur from his vision. As he pushed himself upright, his dagger skittered across the floor, the obsidian blade drinking in the white glow of the gift fire outside. He snatched it up, nearly tripping as he stumbled for the doorway. Shay, get everything ready. Shay caught his arm. You're going after her? You can barely stand. He turned to meet her gaze. I have to, he panted. For a heartbeat, Shay's grip tightened, her eyes alight with a wild desperation. Then her hand fell away. Go. Cal needed no second urging. He was moving before his vision had fully cleared, his boots kicking up the dust and debris as he sprinted through the ruined serenity that had once been Dredge's estate and toward the city. Oh no, oh no, oh yeah. Ovette. Killing 'em all, letting God sort them out. Dun dun dun. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time for 24. Cal shoved his way through the crowd, scanning for any sign of Ovette. The Bay District's market stalls paled in comparison to Eundis's central bazaar, but still drew enough local attention to hinder his progress. People haggled over the expensive wares or gossiped about the latest scandal, forming a living, breathing barrier. Some shot him second glances, whispers of, he looks familiar. Another problem for another time. Ovette was in danger, danger that grew with each passing second. Ovette! Cal hoped in vain that she might respond, when in reality, all it did was draw more attention. He grabbed the nearest person, a man in his late 40s with white hair and the chin whiskers to match, and spun her around. Have you seen a girl run through here? White hair, looking frightened. What's going on? The man's words fell out of him, tripping over either fear or the sheer audacity of being manhandled by a stranger. Cal sharpened his glare, enough to hurry the man's grumbling along. She ran by just a moment ago. Which direction? Cal gripped the man's shoulders. There, he pointed. Toward the... The man's pupils widened as recognition took hold. His mumbling returned, and he quivered in Cal's grasp. It's you! You're the... Fear replaced recognition. Guards! Guards! Help! Hoy, you! What are you doing? A voice barked behind Cal. Cal didn't have time to waste on checking who it was. In one quick motion, he yanked the scared man by his shoulders, throwing him into the approaching threat. The man hit someone with a huff, and Cal sprinted further into the crowd. Stop him! He barreled through people with wanton abandon. His heartbeat spiked as a flash of white hair dipped and wove through bodies ahead. Ovette, so close. Flecks of dirt covered her white dress, the hemline ripped in several places. She looked more like a beggar than a lady of means. The crowd gave her a wide berth, despite her many frantic pleas for aid. Ovette! Wait! Cal shouted. She turned. Panic twisted her features, enough to renew her desire to flee, straight into a patrolling group of prefects. Cal slowed to a stop. Dread tightened his muscles, but not at Ovette tugging the lead prefect's clothing, not at the other disgusted stares. At the figure in black armor with a golden spire in its center. The lead prefect grabbed Ovette by the arm and hauled her away. She fought, struggling in his grasp, pulling against his grip, screaming for help. No one from the crowd moved. No one even looked. The Inquisitor shoved the prefect aside. Ovette stumbled, but regained her footing and renewed her pleas with Ernest, only to be met with a backhand that sent her reeling. As she staggered to regain her composure, the Inquisitor grabbed a fistful of her hair and slammed her to the ground. Cal darted forward. He dipped his shoulder and charged, tackling the Inquisitor. They tumbled. Pain blazed through his shoulder as he rolled atop the man. "Run!" he barked at Ovette. Panicked and confused, she scrambled forward and took off down the street. The prefects gave chase, ignoring Cal and the Inquisitor. His world fell over itself as the Inquisitor placed a boot to his chest and kicked him off. Wind fled his lungs as he hit the ground. The Inquisitor pounced, its hands locking around Cal's throat. Cal strained, gasped as his lungs burned, and his vision grew spotted. He fumbled and grabbed at the Inquisitor's belt, closing on the sharp edge of a dagger. Steel cut into his palm as he wrenched the blade free. He plunged in desperation into the Inquisitor's side. Again, and again, and again. The Inquisitor jolted, yowling as Cal continued his onslaught. The man's hands flew to clutch at the hilt stuck in his side. Cal squirmed free, scrambling back to create some distance, and watched as his opponent collapsed, spasming as blood pooled underneath him. Cal dipped 2 fingers into the crimson pool and sniffed. No chemical scent, just the slight smell of iron. Real blood, not tainted like the others. Puzzled, he flipped the body over to get a better look at his opponent's face. The Inquisitor was young, barely out of his teens, judging by the wisps of scruffy hair on his chin. Younger than any Inquisitor Cal had seen before. The flush of color in the boy's cheeks faded as what little life he had left in him drained. Another body to add to Cal's list. Another reason for Ovette to think him a monster. A blast in the distance jerked his head up and sent a fresh wave of panic down his spine. He closed the boy's eyes and ran. Ahead, one of the prefects that had chased Ovette writhed on the ground, clutching his arm. The cheap iron bracer fused to his flesh. "No! Leave me alone!" Ovette's scream pierced the air. Cal ignored the dying man and sprinted in the direction of Ovette's voice, pumping his legs harder. He couldn't lose her. He wouldn't lose her again. "Get away!" Another blast, followed by an intense flash of white light, erupted from the second floor of a building in front of him. He hit the building's door full sprint, splintering it off its hinges. Silence reigned inside. Cal bounded up the stairs, taking them 2, 3 at a time, blood roaring in his ears. At the top, a charred prefect lay half-fused with the wall. Cal stepped through a hole into a ruined room. Its wall and everything inside it was scorched, its original purpose unrecognizable. The final prefect was nowhere to be seen. Ovette sat on her knees in the room's center, hands outstretched, trembling, her gaze locked with the corpse behind Cal. They tried to." Her voice failed. Cal crouched as he inched closer. He reached for her hands, her skin still warm and vibrating with the gift she had loosed upon her attackers. She recoiled, seeing his palm drip with blood. Clutching her hands to her chest, her wild eyes met his. "Cal?" she muttered. "Cal, they were going to. But I didn't want to." He reached out again, held her hands in his, and pulled her in close. "It's okay. It's okay." She collapsed into his chest, her body shaking with each intensifying sob. "I killed them, Cal." Her words were weak and defeated. "I killed them." "They would have done worse to you." Ovette pushed herself off him, desperation etching her face. "But Cal, they had—" "They didn't have a choice." He cut her off, holding her gaze and wanting nothing more than to take this feeling away from her. "I know this hurts. Believe me, I know. But we can't stay here right now. We need to go." Where? She croaked, her voice strained and high-pitched. Veil Wind, he replied, pulling her in close as fresh sobs took her. I'll take you to Veil Wind, away from all this. But Cal, I... He squeezed tighter. I know, he whispered. I know. All right, we probably got one more in us before we'll be through for the evening, so let's jump into 25. Waves lapped against the side of the boat as it ambled down the coastline. Hues of pink and orange lit the sky, the sun sinking beneath the horizon. Both worked in tandem to soothe Cal, and he exhaled, tension melting from his shoulders. This far from Eunice felt good. Felt one step closer to safety, whatever that was. Any trouble getting to the boat? Shay asked, leaning back against the boat's gunwale. Nothing worth mentioning. Do you think you were followed? She turned, staring out at the waters with Cal. He shot her a look, one that said she should know better. She raised her eyebrows in response. Just making sure. Not like we're in our usual company. Besides, you don't trust her. Cal turned back to the waves. I get it. No, I don't. But I trust you. Shay sighed. How's she doing after? In shock. Cal flexed his fingers, itched at his palm's fresh bandage. Pretty sure they were her first. Shay stretched out her back, hands braced on the boat's edge. Yeah, you never forget your first. She rocked on her feet, puffing out her cheeks as she searched for the right thing to say. You remember yours? Cal asked. Shay scoffed. Her smile held little mirth and all too much self-loathing. Yeah, a prefect cadre back in Eunice. Built his career around sniffing out the Eunice cells. Long story short, he had a very particular type, and I still needed to prove myself. So... She remained silent for a moment, a long moment, her smile slowly fading. I was 13. Cal's fingers stilled on his bandage. For a long while he said nothing. What could he say to something like that? What about you? Shay asked after the silence hung. Remember yours? Cal sighed. Prefect as well. He gritted his teeth as the memory rose to the surface. He'd killed one of the orphans, so I did what you had to do? Yeah. Shay pushed deeper into her stretch, gaze locked on the deck. I've never liked that excuse. Me neither. She turned, pushing herself off the gunwale. Someone should talk to her. Help her through it. Her hand settled on Cal's shoulder, silencing him before he could reply. Not me. Wrong someone. She squeezed and strode toward the prow. Cal watched her for a second. She was right, of course. Leaving Ovette to wallow in her guilt would only make things worse. He knew that all too well. But he felt stuck. He reached beneath his shirt, brow furrowing as he remembered where he'd left the coin pouch. It surprised him how naked he felt without it. A larger wave broke against the hull, and Cal took it as his cue to leave. The boat's interior was cramped, built for a crew of just 4. Cal hadn't thought to ask who captained it when he boarded, and Dredge certainly hadn't volunteered the information. An annoyed-looking crew member brushed past him. A well-built man, with thick hair on his chin and arms, heading for what Cal assumed was the engine room. He ignored Cal as he squeezed by, probably on orders from Dredge to not interfere with his guests. Cal thought of Artie, of how he'd love to inspect the boat's heart. He could feel the hum and thrum of the boat's gift engine vibrating through the deck. Few comforts remained in Cal's life, and each day seemed to shrink that number. But listening to Artie ramble about technology and inventions was one of them. It would be good to reunite with him again. And this time, Cal would do whatever it took to keep him and everyone else he cared about safe. The thought curdled as he reached Ovette's cabin. The door was closed with little light bleeding through the cracks. Cal pressed his palm against the wood and hesitated. He breathed deep, swallowed his shame, and silently swore to himself that he'd say more than a few words this time. Inside, Ovette sat on the floor, her head in her knees, taking up almost no space. The setting sunlight through the room's porthole cast her motionless figure in an eerie glow. Cal's stomach sank as he stared at her from the doorway. Too much like the cell she'd just left. He lowered himself onto the bed closest to her. Its frame creaked, as did the three others squashed beside it. Another wave of guilt washed over him. Now he understood the crew member's frustration. Cal's gaze dropped on the collar still clamped around Ovette's throat. That thing is supposed to suppress the gift, he said, more to himself than to her, but it was all the opener he could think of. Ovette sighed. A quick snap of her fingers summoned a white ember at its tip, no larger than a candle flame, but far hotter. She pressed the fledgling flame against the collar's seam. The metal glowed red, then white, and the stone casing hissed, before the seam popped with a crack. The collar fell to the floor with a satisfying clatter. Guess it doesn't work on the gifted. Ovette hugged her knees tighter. You needed us to think you were powerless, so we'd let our guard down. No response. You were watching us. No, she murmured. Just you. Trust me, there's nothing to see. Not anymore. Cal rubbed his blackened wrist, rolled numb fingers. I wanted to see if you were still in there, behind all the killing, behind all the anger. Am I? Ovette lifted her head from her knees, eyes bloodshot but no less fierce. Does it ever get any easier? Killing someone? No, not really, he said. Good. It shouldn't. His arm pulsed as he continued to look at Ovette. He flexed his fingers again, but that only intensified the feeling. You did what you had to do. To survive, he repeated. That doesn't make it any easier. Doesn't make it right. Her chin was on her knees. She was slipping away again. I know. But those men made their choice. Whatever their reasons, they chose to be there and to act as they did. You aren't responsible for their choices. Is that what you tell yourself? How you justify it? You and that woman? I never said anything about justifying it. Cal dug his nails into the bedsheet. Did you ever regret joining the rebellion? Obed asked after a silence. Did you ever regret joining the Lord Inquisitor? The words cut as they left his throat. He killed Roskell, Lady Havisham. He didn't. That prefect. They were there on his order. They died because of him, he snapped, the words coming on their own volition, leaving a nasty taste in his mouth. They didn't die because of him. Ovette shrank into herself. They died because of me. Her reply felt like a punch to the gut. I never joined him. Not really, Ovette said. Cal resisted. He shouldn't push her. Not now. But the thought clawed free. He brainwashed you. Held you against your will. like those criminals did to you? Not the same. I survived. I grieved. I spent years of my life blaming myself. And what did you do? You stayed with the man who killed our family. His voice rose, sharp enough to carry through the hull. I had nowhere else to go. Her voice wavered, but held firm. Your life wasn't the only one that had shattered. Cal choked back the heat behind his eyes. I thought you were dead. I thought everyone was. Her gaze locked onto his, on the verge of tears. The Lord Inquisitor helped me discover who I am, what it means to be gifted. He didn't help you. He molded you into the person, into the gifted he needed. You were nothing more than a tool. And what does that make you, Chainbreaker? Why did you stay with him? His face betrayed his frustration. Her rising venom told him that much. There are good people among the Davins, as well as us Udens. I stayed not only because I wanted to learn more about my gift, but because I wanted to help protect those who were just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. The more I heard about the rebellion and what they were doing, the more I. And what now? The Lord Inquisitor has declared you a rebel, one who aided in killing the matriarch, no less. I don't know. Her voice was muffled against her knees. He took care of me for so long, guided me, while the hand protected me, made me feel safe. Cal's stomach twisted at the thought of the hand. That thing made you feel safe? He scared me at first, but there was always something familiar about him. I can't explain it, but whenever I was alone with him, I felt like I was back in our hideout in Igni. Her grip tightened around her knees. And now he's gone too. Cal stared at his blackened hand. I'm sorry about what happened with him. He didn't give me a choice. He cleared his throat, swallowed dry again. If there'd been another way. He stopped, dropped his head, not daring to stare at her anymore. I'm sorry. Something dropped into his palm. His fingers twitched on reflex, brushing against rough fabric. The coin pouch. But this is yours. I know. She sat back, looking away. I don't think I'm ready to take it back yet. His fingers closed around it. Right. He stood, the door creaking as he opened it. Keep it safe for me? Ovette's voice hooked him in mid-step. For just a little longer? The ghost of a smile curled her lips. The first he'd seen since she'd come back into his life. Fragile, but there. Sure. He nodded, but not daring to meet her gaze. I'll wait. Her faint smile held as he left. How'd it go? Shay asked as Cal joined her at the boat's prow. About as expected. Lantern light flickered in the darkness ahead. Lights used to help guide boats to port. At this hour, only a handful of workers and latecomers lingered. Fewer witnesses to their arrival meant fewer problems. Cal had no idea how they'd book passage on an airship, but one problem at a time. What's the plan when we get to Valewind? Shay asked. I have no idea. Planning's never exactly been my strong suit. I've always been more of a follower, a doer. You and me both, Shay said. Let's leave the thinking to Jord and Cal cut off. Shay stiffened beside him. Shay, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. He turned to face her, fully face her. I haven't even asked if you're okay. It's fine. She avoided his gaze. You've had a lot on your plate. Her voice trailed off, unconvinced. No, Shay, I've been an ass. More than usual. I should have done something. Done what? She cocked her head to the side. I don't know. Just something. Shay laughed, a few real chuckles aimed at the deck. No offense, Cal, but you're not my first choice when it comes to talking things through. You've never really been there for me like that. Another not my strong suit, huh? I'll say. But I'm here now. We can talk. Shay exhaled, staring at the approaching dock. Her gaze tracked the gentle sway of a lantern. Honestly, I don't know what there is to say. I never knew him as a father. Not really. He was always the rebel leader, a pillar of the insurgency. I spent years trying to impress him, trying to prove myself. Never felt like I measured up, though. What do you mean? Being his daughter came with expectations, a role I was meant to fill, and now he's gone. Shay huffed, leaning heavier against the rail. You ask me? I'd say you've more than measured up. Shay met his eyes. People look up to you. They trust you with their lives. You've saved mine more times than I can count. I can't think of a better person to take his place. That's just the thing, Cal. I'm not even sure I want to. In all their years together, he'd never seen Shay so deflated. To him, she'd been the person who knew who she was. She acted without doubt, without fear, kept her head when everyone else lost theirs. People will look to you, Shay. Like it or not, they need someone like you to guide them. My father turned ordinary, scared people into soldiers willing to die for the chance at a better life. He inspired thousands. I can't do what he did. I'm not like him. Cal took a breath, steadied himself. I've no memories of my parents. No idea who brought me into this world. He held her gaze. I don't know what it's like to live in someone else's shadow, to feel crushed by a past you had no part in. But I do know one thing, Shay. You're not your father. You don't have to be him to inspire others. I didn't stick around this long because of him. Shay studied him. Well, there's a first. The great chainbreaker admitting he needs me. Cal smiled and put his hand on hers. I can't tell you what to do, Shay. I can barely figure out what it is I want to do. What you do from here on out is a choice only you can make. And what if I said I wanted to run away from all of this? Just leave everything behind and start a new life somewhere. I'd say I'd miss you, but also that you deserve whatever freedom you think running away might bring you. She inched closer. What about you? Any chance the chain breaker would want to join me? It's a nice thought. He meant the words. But I have a feeling that's not what life has in store for me. Shay chuckled, as if she'd expected nothing else. So much for choosing for ourselves, huh? Who says I didn't choose this? Cal smiled and let go of Shay's hand as the boat bumped against the dock. Crewmen hopped ashore and started pulling the boat in the rest of the way, securing it with a rope as soon as they were able. Shay stepped onto the wooden planks, took in a deep breath, and turned back. Thanks, Cal, for being there. Better late than never, right? She smiled. Genuine. Right. And guys, that is where we will stop our reading for this evening. Barbette, if you made it through, hey, great, thanks. Appreciate you being here with me. If you didn't, sleep is an important thing. Never any harm or foul in needing to go and catch yourself a couple of Z's. Will never bother me. All right, guys, we made it quite a bit into this. Cal has snapped himself another chain, met up with Ovette again, and ready to move forward. So I want to say thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give to me is the gift of your time. And I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or for 2.5 hours. Thanks so much for being here. As a reminder, all of the recorded chapters will be available a little bit later this evening on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius. You can catch up with anything that you happen to have missed, all the way starting from the prelude up through chapter 25 later this evening. The chapters before tonight are, of course, already there. You can also stop out to Amazon and pick up the book Gyfted by D.W. Lewis. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Or you can also pick it up on Kindle Unlimited. Give it a read through. If you need to catch up or can't stand the slow pace that I'm giving you, making it take weeks and weeks to finish your books. Either way, thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting the indie authors. And I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful evening. I will be back again on Thursday with Stompy Mech Night, where we'll play some Mech Warrior Online, and it'll also be time to open some supply caches, some loot bags, and start a new Mech Warrior book, Battletech book. Have yourselves a wonderful evening. Thank you again so much, and I will see you guys soon. Good night, all.